Welcome to the Open House podcast site, available at openhousecommunity.com.au.
Most of Australia is familiar with the characters who made up the real-life TV drama Underbelly. My next guest grew up with many of them. Most of them are now dead. Justin Gardner lived a life of crime, using and dealing drugs since the age of 12. At 22, he found himself plotting a murder. He was incredibly lost, even suicidal. He says there was only one place he could turn, to God. And today, he's the senior pastor at Destiny Centre Christian Church in Victoria. In his book, Crime Son, we hear about Justin's truly incredible story, another story of incredible transformation. Justin Gardner, welcome to Open House.
Hi, how you going?
Fine, thanks. Thanks very much for joining us, Justin.
That's fine.
What do you say makes someone head down such a path of what might be considered self-destruction?
I think for me, it was probably different things that led to that. But at the end of the day, it's probably the people that I hung around with. I had circumstances at home that weren't the best with my dad, but I did fall in with the wrong crowds all the time. And
there's a real pressure of peer pressure in that, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a lot of rage in me as a kid, a lot of anger. So I always hung out with older people, and they were always up to no good. So I found myself probably a place where I could vent anger and get up to no good with those guys. It's probably a coping mechanism for me as a kid. Now I look back.
When you reflect back on that anger, where do you say it came from? Why did it emerge in your life?
That definitely came from my father. He was very violent, very aggressive man, and a very hard man to please. He used to always put very heavy burdens on me that I pretty much could never meet, and I suppose because of that there's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger in me as a kid that I didn't understand.
There was no way of fighting back as a youngster, I suppose.
No, not at all. It was always a feeling of helplessness, but at the same time it was a mixed feeling because I really loved my dad, and so there was a side of wanting to please him no matter what, so I could sort of almost put aside how he treated me and how he was, to still try and please him.
Some of the people you mixed with ended up being portrayed in the Underbelly TV series.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us about them.
I grew up with them, and I used to always hang around the amusements and different things. So we always grew up together, and I'd been involved in stealing cars since I've been probably 11 with older boys, and so some of those guys were into sort of petty crimes back then, and a bit of drugs and different things. But I suppose as they got older, the drugs increased, and wherever there's drugs, there's lies, deception, and fear. And the rest is history, and pretty much all those guys are dead now.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you now look at what happened through not just the TV series, but through their real life, that's the path that you were heading on.
I tried to sort of break away from, where those sort of guys were going, because they increased heavier drugs, probably one of the things that saved my life is I had a fear of syringes, I had a fear of needles. So when majority of my friends started using speed and heroin, I didn't. So, but I still was self-medicating and alcohol and smoking a lot of dope and things like that, and it really messed with my mind. But yeah, that's probably what saved my life in that part, I would say.
One interesting term you used to tell your story is being dream bankrupt. What do you mean by that?
Well, I got to the point where, I'd had no dreams left at all. I never had a dream to be married, to ever have children. The hope of living just completely drained out of me. I was lying on a floor in a place called St. Albans, and everyone had left me, and I had no one around me. I had gold chains, which meant you were somebody in that world, and all the materialistic things meant nothing. It was like I could have had the best of everything, but all the joy, the pleasure was gone from it. So, I had no dreams whatsoever left.
Was there no one to whom you could go to cry out for help?
No, not at all. Not at all. No one. No one. I was tormented inside. I was vomiting and shaking every day for, when I look back, it would have to be a month and a half, maybe more. And I went to doctors desperately. They gave me medication. I didn't know what they gave me. I was just desperate. But what happened is it would numb the outside of my body, but inside was still like a raging volcano. suicidal thoughts would have been thousands of times a day, wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, and there was no one that could help me.
So then you call out to God, but before I ask you to tell me that part of the story, was he ever part of your past up until that time?
Well, I was brought up in a Catholic family, so, one thing I've definitely learned is going to church doesn't make you a Christian, just like obviously going to McDonald's doesn't make you a hamburger. And I was brought up in that, but I never chose Christ for myself. I learned about Christ as a Catholic, and I learned about God and that Jesus died for me. But I suppose for me, at a young age, I saw some hypocrisy in people that started sort of getting to me at a very young age. My father, how he was in church, and then how he was at home. And, or for instance, I would go to the confessional booth to get my sins forgiven, and I'd line up and I'd pick and choose my sins. And I remember knowing that I couldn't tell the priest that while other people were making deposits in the plate going past, I was making withdrawals. So I knew from that day that I still, that sin was stuck with me. And I suppose then I sort of gave up on God, knowing that I've got this sin I can't confess to anyone. That was as a very young boy. And I've been thieving ever since my hands have been moving. I reckon if you asked my mum when I started stealing, she would have said before the womb,
So fast forward to the age of 22. That's when you call out to God. Tell me about what life was like for you then.
I tried to clean my life up, I suppose. As people, I think we look at other people that are worse off or into worse things than us, and we might justify our actions of our life and think we're okay. And I started to try and work a normal job and bits and pieces, and but I still was empty. I was still empty, and I'd just gone through a breakup with a fiancée, a girl that I was with since I've been a teenager, and in the end, even she gave up on me, and I don't blame her. I was a mess. I was very just an angry person and very hard to please. I ended up being exactly like my dad, really. In those ways, I just could not be pleased by anybody. But Christians, the way it ended up was Christians used to come out in the streets and tell me about Jesus and tell me how I could be saved when I was young, a teenager. And my response to that was I would spit on them and say things about their mums to try and prove that what they were doing wasn't real and that they were fake. But their message won me over in my heart. I never showed them, but when I was suicidal years later, I knew that I could call out to Christ, and also to Christian sister that had been praying for me.
So what happened then when you did that?
Just before I'd end up on those floorboards, ready to, end my life, my mother had invited me to a church in Hoppers Crossing, which is about 20 minutes from where I was from, and I was desperate, and I went there. And long story short, it was very hard for me to walk in there that night. I'd never seen that many people in one place. And I walked up and sat in the front row. I really wanted to sit in the back row, but I was that rebellious. I sat in the front row, but I sat in reserved seating for the guest speaker. I didn't know, but the church people seemed to let me know just with their body language, and I felt like eyes were burning into my back. Anyway, I felt very rejected and left. And an old man came outside and shook my hand, and he apologised. He saw what happened. He said, I can sit anywhere. And he was a very genuine man. His apology touched my heart, even though I didn't accept it and go back in. But then flash forward to that night on the floor, I'm going to blow my brains out, and I called out to Christ, asked him to come into my heart and save me. And I still remember I said, if you'll just save me and forgive my sins, anything you ask me to do, I'll do it for you. I don't want any of this materialistic stuff anymore. I just want you. And then I felt hope come into my heart right there. My suicidal thoughts were still there, but hope had come in, and I knew I was right with God. So it was late at night, maybe 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And I thought the first thing I need to do is ring a church. Well, the first church that came to mind was the one that just scarred me and rejected me. So, childlike faith, I rang that number that late, and the phone answered, and that old man was the caretaker of the church that shook my hand and apologised. And he prayed for me on the phone, set up for me to see a pastor the next day. And long story short, I'm the senior pastor of that church 16 years later.
It's a remarkable story. And what a beautiful moment that, A, at that time, that phone was answered by anyone, and B, that was the guy.
Yeah, it's miraculous. Absolutely miraculous.
Did your life take a sudden turn then?
Absolutely. I meant what I prayed to Jesus, and but it was very hard because I'd just lived such a dishonest life my whole life. Now I'm having to learn to be honest. So what I had to do is I had to move away from the culture that I'd grown up in and the temptation. So I did that. And that's a scary thing, because even though you know it's right, you're moving to something you don't know. And the unknown's pretty scary for people, but I did that, and I moved away, and I moved to Hoppers Crossing, and where I'm a pastor of the church now. And my mum took me back in, and I started to have my relationship restored with my mum. And I was a broken young man, and I was like a baby again. I couldn't read properly or anything like that, and my mum would give me my little sister's picture Bible, and I'd be in bed at night, and she'd be praying for me like a child. Like, it was like my childhood that I was robbed of was starting to be restored. And I'd read the picture Bible and see the pictures of Jesus and get the stories like that. And then I started to renew my own mind, and I started to just have the Bible on tape. And then I started getting some healing in the mind, and I started to be able to read properly and retain what I was reading. And I probably listened to between 6 and 13 sermons a week and read about 3 or so books for about 11 and a half, 12 years straight.
I love stories like yours. On Open House, we're with Justin Gardner. As he said, he's the senior pastor of the Destiny Christian Church in Victoria. He's written about his wonderful story in Crime's Son. So take us through the journey that then leads you to becoming a senior pastor of a church.
Yeah, well, that's a bit of a shock, because I've been going to, every time a service is on, I'm there, because I still look the same. I look like a drug dealer. I'm covered in gold chains. I wear a cap and sunglasses in church from start to finish. I don't really even want to talk to people. Not that I don't want to know people. I'm just not there for them. I'm there for God. And I'm crying every service. And I remember I used to be so embarrassed, and week after week crying every service. And I remember going home saying to God, you know, why can't I stop crying? And I felt God say to me that you'll never cry the same tears twice, because I'm healing you from all the pain you've been stored up over all those years. And if I healed you in one go, you wouldn't live through it. So it was weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe months of crying. And then I started serving in church and started stirring coffees, another form of drug dealing, really, caffeine. And so I was stirring coffees, and I was thinking to myself, my mind's renewed. 6 months after Christian, my suicidal thoughts were stopped completely. Never had them again. And I'm stirring coffees thinking this is the best place I've ever been in my life, and I'd be happy to do this for Christ for the rest of my life. And I still feel that way today, to tell the truth. If he was to call me back and stir coffees, I'd do it with my whole heart, just as happy as what I'm doing now for him.
But it's still quite a journey to go through the study and the application to being a leader in that church from stirring coffees.
Well, what happened was I started seeing that even in church culture, there seemed to be maybe sort of groups started to gather after church, and I used to see sort of some people were included in those, and so I started sort of reaching out to people that no one maybe reached out to, and I started reaching out to people in halfway houses and schizophrenics and people battling with alcoholism and drugs, and I started bringing them to church and just filling my car. I thought, anything I've got for God, I'll use it for others. And a senior pastor started seeing that, and I remember he gave me a key one day to the church, and he said to me, anytime you want to come and open the church and use an office to pray for someone or help someone, here it is. And I can't remember ever anyone trusting me. Something inside me warmed that he would trust me to the key of the church. And that's sort of how it happened. I just started caring for people and bringing people, and before I know it, God told me to go to Bible college, and I didn't know to study or anything, but I remembered the words. They were a reminder of the words that I'll do anything you ask me to do. So I went to Bible college just hoping for a pass, and I did pass, and I made it through, and and the door started open. I was in full-time ministry within 3 years of being saved, just after 3 years.
Stunning stuff. And it just seems like door after door after door is opening for you.
It's still the same today. It hasn't changed. One thing that I've always prayed for is for divine appointments, that God would open doors for me to connect with others that he wants me to connect with, purely for them, not for me. And I think when you have a heart to pray that way, that whoever God aligns you with, that you won't take advantage of that for you. It's purely for them, that they can be touched or blessed or have a need met in his name. I think you'll find that doors opened quicker than anything in your life.
And you still have that passion for people on those dark streets of Melbourne.
Oh, well, I've got a passion for anyone. I get to minister to millionaires and murderers and homeless people and intellectuals and everybody. I'm not saying I don't fear. I'm still a human being, but I always know this, that everyone I meet is fighting something. Everyone. So I feel sort of equal with them because I'm fighting my own stuff too. And without Christ, I'm in big strife. So I always feel like we're the same, and I'm looking to meet a need in them, encourage them, even give them a laugh. And, the Bible talks about that's like medicine. If you can give someone a laugh, I'm looking for a need to meet in their lives. So. And the world's full of needs. We live in a fatherless generation, and I've got a father's heart. And so, yeah, I have a heart for everyone now, and that's the way it is. Old, young, the whole deal.
There are lots of spectators to the Christian faith who listen to Open House, which I'm so pleased about. Justin, what would you say to them? What form of words would you use to describe how powerful Jesus has been in your life?
I've never met a greater love. I never knew that someone could love me more than I love me. I never knew that someone could give me undeserved grace and mercy and give me a second and a third and endless chances, and that he doesn't change his mind about me. It's incredible to know that. So that's the best way I can describe it. Someone that will never leave me, no matter what. And it's not performance-based. He's already made up his mind about me. He loves me, and he loves them too. He's only made one of them. Everyone has the same different fingerprints. I was in a jail ministering to women recently, and I said to them, this isn't the end of your story. This is only a part of it, and this doesn't define you. And no matter if you've got a criminal record, that's just a label. That's not who you are. I said Christ has given each and every one of you fingerprints. He's fashioned you, and no one's got the same fingerprints as you. And I said, the government's got records to prove it. So everyone's an original. He loves everyone. He's only got one of them, and he's not making another one of them.
And for you and for so many who listen tonight, it's very real. It can be raw and infinitely beyond just the theoretical or the theological or the religious.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I had a personal relationship with Christ before I really knew, the depths of His love that was written in Scripture, of how He healed the poor and how He touched the lepers and healed them and included them in His life in an era where people weren't supposed to touch them or go near them publicly. Before I saw the depths of His compassion being moved when He'd look over the multitudes of people without a shepherd or someone to love them or help them or protect them, I knew Him personally, His love for me personally, before I even read the Bible. So He's a real God, and He was a real man, 100% man, 100% God that walked this earth, and He's still very real now, and He's still very much alive and seated in heaven. And the Bible clear says that He lives to intercede, which means to pray for people. I think it says in Hebrews chapter 7, verse 25. And I picture this: how does Jesus pray? Well, He turns to the Father and He talks to the Father about you and me. And I think that's pretty incredible.
I think the best way to finish our wonderful conversation, Justin, is to ask you about your family.
Oh, my family, that's just incredible. I've got 2 boys and a beautiful wife. And with my wife, everything that I've got good has come through Christ. It's just come through relationship with Him. My sister, who was a Christian, who had been praying for me for years, she was in a different church, and her prayer partner that she would meet with and pray for me, that is now my mother-in-law. Her daughter, she was praying for her daughter. My sister was praying for me. And my wife, I met her in this church, which is a different church. We'd never met each other, never met her mum, and we met each other, and then it all clicked. Your mum had prayed for me, your grandmother had prayed for me, and today I've got 2 sons, and my wife is just my best friend. It's incredible.
Tell us about those 2 sons, Davis and Oscar.
Oh, Davis, he's just the most... I've learned a lot about God through my sons. Because no matter if they play up in the day, don't clean their rooms and do the things they're supposed to do, when I look over them at night and I see them just breathing, I feel nothing but love towards them. And I know I'm just an earthly father. And if I can feel that way towards my sons, I can't even really grasp how amazing it is how He feels towards us. So my sons are my everything. They teach me about God. They keep me humble. They're very soft and kind boys. And when Davis was born, I still remember when he was born and the first time I saw him, I felt God say to me, this would have been one of the things you would have missed out on if you killed yourself all those years ago. So, yeah, they're good. They're good. They pray for me all the time before I minister, and they're just champion kids.
Justin, I've loved speaking with you. I'm sure everyone around Australia and beyond has loved hearing your amazing story tonight. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. We'll put the details of Crime Son up on our Open House Community Facebook page. Thank you so much.
Well, great. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We hope you